I'm Eddie Galvez, architect here at Tibco. What I'm going to do in this video is an overview of how to go from a blank project to a running live Datamart Server configuration. What I'm going to be using is Tibco StreamAce Studio, and I have installed Tibco StreamAce CEP, of course, along with the Tibco Live Datamart. I've also installed Tibco LiveView Desktop, which we'll use at the end of the demo. So to get started, you should be in StreamAce Studio. You should be in the authoring perspective. If you've just recently downloaded, you might be in this demos perspective and you want to click off to the authoring perspective. So now this is not a full tutorial of the full capabilities of StreamAce Studio. For that, you should refer to the documentation, other available videos. The goal here is we're going to start a brand new project with nothing in it, and we're going to build just about the minimal necessary artifacts to have a running live Datamart server. I also want to point out that there are many samples included with the product. These samples for the LiveView product are available here in this chooser that I've brought up. There is a Hello World sample that's very good at familiarizing yourself with most of the features at a basic level. There is actually also another minimal configuration sample that is different from this video so that you have some more content to look at. Now, to get started, we're going to create a project. A StreamAce project is where you can either create a StreamAce CEP or a live Datamart configuration. We're going to create thus our first StreamAce project using the new StreamAce project wizard. I've chosen most of the default settings. I have unchecked the creating an eventful application file since we won't need that for now. But if you do create it, it does not matter. Now we have our project. The first thing we're going to do is create a file that we're going to use and reference quite a bunch. We're going to create an eventful interface file. An interface file, amongst other things, holds schemas, that is, definitions of what our data looks like. So in this editor, we can actually add a named schema. We're going to create a named schema. We're going to call it the sales event schema. We're going to add a couple of fields. Every event is going to have a sales time. That will be a timestamp. Going to have a sales ID. That's going to be just a number to uniquely identify every sale. We're going to have a category, which will stay as a string. And we're going to have the actual item, also a string. And we're going to finish off with two numeric data fields. We're going to have items have a certain price, and each sale event have a given quantity for that sale, which we're going to have as an integer. There we are. So to recap here, we've created a named schema called sales event schema, and you can see the data will look like a timestamp, it will have an ID, and then the category and the item, as well as for the sales event, a quantity and the total price. We're going to save this file. Next, we are going to create a feed simulation. Now, feed simulations is a tool that's built into the Tibco StreamAce CEP product. It allows to create a live data stream where one is not present. So in this case, what we're going to want to do is we're not going to connect to a data source. There are lots of features to do so. For this demo, we're going to just generate live data stream. So we're going to make a sales simulator that is going to simulate events using this schema. This is the feed simulator editor. What we're going to do here is take the schema from the named schema we just created. So this tells the simulator what kind of data to simulate. Now, a feed simulator can actually generate data on its own. It is also a tool that's very useful to read from a data file if you have a recording, for example, or you've created a recording using the tool. It can also read from a database and thus transition from a database to a live data stream. What we're going to do here is generate data based on a description using this dialog. Now, for each field, we're going to configure it. The sales time, we're going to actually configure that later, not in the simulator, so we're just going to say constant value of null. The sales ID, we're going to use an incremented value. This will just simply assign an incrementing number, unique number for every event. That'll be suitable for this demo. The category, we're going to provide the simulator with an enumeration. To keep this demo short, we're just going to have two categories of things. We're going to have books and toys. Now, for the item, to make it a bit more realistic, we're going to make it conditional on the category. So I'll be able to give a list of values for every category. So we're going to have books, and we're going to have our toys. And for books, I'm going to give the simulator again an enumeration so that it selects from either of these 3 books that I will enter. Again, this will allow us to see some more realistic looking data when we run the demo. And let's put in Peter Pan. All right. And for our toys, we are going to do the same. Have an enumeration, and we're just going to have some simple toys here, blocks, and stuffed animal. All right. Now finally for the price. So again, we're just looking for realistic looking data, not real data. So for price, let's just pick a random uniform distribution of prices between 2 and 12. And for the quantity, we're going to do the same, a uniform distribution between at least 1 item and 7. Okay, we now have our simulator set. The next thing we want is the first configuration of a live Datamart data table. So we're going to do 2 things. We're going to start with a basic table where what we want is to capture all the sales events. So we're going to bring up the LiveView configuration file wizard. I'm going to term my table all sales, selecting here data table, that's the default. And we're now looking at the LiveView configuration file editor. A data table needs a schema. We already have one. We're just going to capture the exact events as they are produced. And therefore, we tell our table that we're using the sales event schema created earlier. In the index tab, we need a primary key. We're going to choose the sales ID, which is a unique value for every sale. Now, we're going to stop here for now. This configuration is sufficient to start a LiveView server, actually. It will have a table waiting for data. What we're going to do next is wire up the feed simulator to this table. So for that, we're going to create an eventful application, a CEP application file, which will provide logic that will run our feed simulator and send it to our all sales table. So we're going to call this the sales app. We're going to use this is the new stream-based event flow application wizard. Clicking configure for use with Streamy's LiveView will actually generate a bunch of things so you don't have to. So here it actually offers me the various types of applications that are usually used with Live Datamart. In this case, I'm selecting data source, and I'm saying that it's data source for the all sales table. Data source is an application that provides data to a Live Datamart table. Selecting finish, we have an event flow application editor in front of us that's waiting for the logic. Select the adapters entry from the palette. Search for the feed simulation adapter. This is the adapter we need to use our simulator in this application. We configure just one of its properties. It wants to know what file we're using. We point to our sales simulator file we created earlier. And that's it. Now we're going to do 2 things just to demonstrate a bit of data pre-processing. We're going to drop a map operator. This allows us to modify the event before it reaches the Live Datamart table. We're going to do 2 things. One is to timestamp every field. We could have done this in the feed simulator, but just to illustrate at least a transform here. So the sales time field, we're going to ask this map operator to timestamp it right now. Of course, in real life, most events, if they have a timestamp that's external, you should bring that into the application. Although at times it's also important to have a timestamp at the server when it's received. Next, there are some control fields. There are advanced features of the Live Datamart Server, in particular for HA, for high availability and recovery. Here we're going to just not set those values, but we do have to configure this. So I am bringing in the control fields and telling the map operator to set them to nothing. So we're going to edit this map operator and indicate that doing this. This syntax says to take all the control fields and simply set them to null values. That's which is fine for this demo. Refers to documentation for actual values for each of these control fields. Now we can go back to our all sales table and notice the data sources tab. So there are some choices here. The choice we want to select is the application. This is how you indicate to the Live Datamart that there is an application to start as the Live Datamart server starts, and that it will feed data to it. Now, what we need to do, however, is to create a LiveView configuration file that declares the application we created. So this one is the sales app. This time select application right here. And this is just to register the eventful application file we just created and tell the Live Datamart to load it. So the only default setting we need here is the application. That's that. We can save and close that editor. So we're back to our all sales table. Select application, select sales app, and it wants the stream that it should read to get the data into the table. In this case, it's the data out. That's the default name that the wizard will generate. So we're good there. Now we're going to do one more thing, just to scratch the surface of advanced features that are very, very easy to use. We're going to create one more LiveView configuration file to create an aggregate table. So refer to the documentation for full details about what an aggregate table is. However, it is a way to, without using CEP application logic, to simply create a view of another data table, for in this case, like a roll-up. So we're going to have a sales by category data table. And what we mean by that, we're going to create the schema on the fly here. So we want our table to have a by category, so the first field will be the category. And the aggregation, we're just, for illustrating this, we're going to have the average price of all the sales for that category and the average quantity of all sales for that category. So we need to set these to numeric. Next, the primary key will be category. And finally, this data table will be an aggregation, so I select the aggregation tag there, of the all sales table. We now provide the aggregations. Again, these are very simple. We say that the average price is what we want in the first field and the average quantity in the second field. Save that. Now, that's all we're going to do here. To start the LiveView server against this, you can right-click on your project and choose the Run as Streamy's LiveView project entry, which we're going to do now. To monitor progress of the startup of the server, you can look at the console view, which by default will actually show on the bottom of your screen. What you're waiting to see is this message that says all tables have been loaded, LiveView is ready to accept client connections. Now, to just validate the configuration we have, I'm going to start LiveView Desktop. Recall that the Tibco Streamy's LiveView Desktop is a separate install. If you don't have it, make sure you download it. So I've started LiveView Desktop. I'm going to connect to my server here, localhost, my machine, and I'm just going to use a local workspace that's just to store the configuration of LiveView Desktop. All right, now I have preset a few queries here, but we can see on the left on LiveView Desktop, we see our all sales table, our sales by category table. We also see an LV alerts table. That's a default table that is inserted into every project that allows you to manage alerts. You can read documentation for how to configure that to suit your need. We have here a query that's just simply showing the last 200 sales events. We're seeing them go by. These are coming from the feed simulator. And this has been configured to show certain columns. In this case, we're going to make sure we want to see the price and over here, there they are. And on the top right, we're actually looking at the sales by category table. You can see here that there are just 2 rows since the data that we have has only 2 categories. You're seeing the average price, average quantity. On the bottom right, I just have a pie chart just to illustrate the desktop. So that's it. This validates that we have a running live Datamart server, and you have seen the parts that are involved in doing that. Thanks for watching.